Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we've got a 5-game slate for the NBA. This slate, I'm going to just go ahead and caution you to play light. There are a lot of injuries, a lot of injury situations we have to wait on until closer to lock. And then, of course, we have the Clippers and Golden State Warriors, and who knows who ends up playing in that game. So, with that said, let's get into the game picks. We have Toronto and Orlando, Milwaukee over Boston, Phoenix over Sacramento, and Portland over Washington. I didn't pick this game because it just really depends on who plays in the game. But with that said, this slate has a lot of injuries, so let's go and get into that. For the Celtics, Brown and Smart are out. Tatum is currently doubtful. Brogdon is probable. Robert Williams and Grant Williams are both questionable. For the Bucks, Portis is out. For the Magic, Cole Anthony is questionable. For the Raptors, Trent Jr. and Acho are both questionable, and Obi is out. For the Kings, Monk is out. For the Suns, Durant, Payne, and Shamet are out. For the Warriors, Klay Thompson is currently questionable. Jam Green is questionable. Curry is out, and Lamb is out. Now, note that sometimes the Warriors end up waiting late to release who all is going to be out, so do have to be concerned about that a little bit today in a back-to-back. For the Wizards, Kuzma is questionable, and for the Trailblazers, Nurkic and Winslow are out, and Grant is questionable. So I've got a few guys to kind of talk about first before I get into my top picks. And the two guys I'm going to talk about here are Malcolm Brogdon and Anthony Simmons, as well as actually Jeremy Grant. All three of them have priced down some as a result of not playing particularly well lately, despite the fact that they're in great situations to play well due to other injuries and stuff like that. And so I think that all three of them must be battling some sort of injuries, or in the Celtics case, maybe Brogdon is just not playing as many minutes as he should be playing, but I'm not sure exactly what the deal with those guys are. So I am going to probably mention those guys throughout my video, but you want to make sure to look at their history recently and consider if you think that they're back to full shape or they're going to play full complement of minutes and like they normally do in these injury-filled situations. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about Anthony Simmons. We're going to start with him here. Now, the thing with him is that he's in a great situation to play well, and his price is actually pretty decent still. It's come down some from where it was, but he really just hasn't been getting over 30 fantasy points much, and that's somewhat surprising considering the situation. He should have more usage, taking a lot of shots and stuff like that, but he's not hitting as much, I guess, and so that's really hurting him. Despite the minutes being there, he just hasn't been that great, and so it's hard to want to roster him. But he is viable, but I really question rostering him. And then the second guy is going to be Brogdon, for Boston, who he is actually probable today, not questionable like this showing, but he too has been kind of inconsistent lately, despite this roster opening up for him with Marcus Smart being out and Jaylen Brown being out, and then Tatum might be out today as well. He really hasn't taken advantage of that, and that's surprising considering that he's been kind of in the running for Sixth Man of the Year. He really hadn't had it the last week or so. I'm not really sure what the deal with that is. I don't know if he's just been hurt a little bit, which is really affecting him a lot, so it might be good if he actually took a couple games off since everybody else is for Boston. But I don't necessarily love them. I mean, both of them, both him and Anthony Simmons, they both just look really solid today based on those situations. But they have not played well, and I don't know if there's injury, concerns there or not. But that said, we're just going to talk about the Warriors here real quick. And as you know, that they're in a back-to-back, and they're also playing the Clippers. And typically when they're back-to-back, some of their starters sit. Now, Steve Kerr said that yesterday that Klay Thompson might play today, which who knows what that means. So we'll have to wait and see what that situation plays up like, because depending on who starts for them, that could influence who you might want to play in fantasy. So it's really hard to make good justifications at this point until we get more information. And so I just wanted to mention those things before I get into the video. We're going to go ahead and start off with Boston players, though. So there's 5 guys to really consider today, and those are going to be Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, who I already mentioned some, and then we're going to look at Sam Hauser, and then Grant Williams, who is questionable currently, and Peyton Pritchard. Now I'm going to go through each guy here real quick, and I'm just putting them here so I can, click them quickly. First, we're going to talk about Derek White. Now, Derek White has played extremely well lately. Now, the big risk here with him is that this game could be a huge blowout, especially if all these guys end up sitting. And I expect him to have good opportunity, though, in this game. He's played really well lately, though his price has come up a lot. So do take him with a grain of salt due to that price. But if you think this game can stay relatively close, then he would definitely have a massive amount of upside today. Obviously, I talked about Brogdon already. Then Sam Hauser. Now, he looks like he's probably going to start today. His price has also come up a little bit, but playing over 30 minutes, he'll have some good upside here in this matchup. I don't think he's a great play, but he's a solid play. Now, this is my favorite play if he ends up playing Grant Williams. He has been really solid the last few games with all the injuries to the Celtics, and he's played really well. He does have a very low floor, but he has a high ceiling in this type of situation. His price is still good, so he will be one of my favorite plays from the Celtics today if he does end up starting and playing. And then Peyton Pritchard. This is really dependent on how the other players play out. The other thing I'll point out is that he would have more upside if Brogdon was to miss again. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But if he ends up starting too, that would definitely give him a boost. The other thing I'll mention here is that if Grant Williams and Robert Williams both get ruled out, then you'd have to take a look at Al Horford as well. So there's just a lot with the Celtics. And again, they're in a tough matchup against Milwaukee, a team I don't usually like to roster anybody against. So, but on a smaller slate like this, it might be advantageous to look at several of those guys and consider them. With that said, let's get into my main players that I like. I'm going to start with Damian Lillard. Now, I do think he's a little bit overpriced today due to the fact he's in the back-to-back, and even though he has been playing extremely well, he has a pretty good floor. He's been over 50 fantasy points in 9 of the last 13 games, and he didn't have to play as many minutes yesterday to blow out, but he's also in a situation where he could blow out another team. So we'll have to wait and see. He's shooting the ball extremely well. He's had, I think, 14 threes in the last 2 games, and he's been playing extremely well. I like how he's playing, though he's really not getting the, we'd like him to get like a double-double some more often, but he's still doing really well, so I think he's in a great spot coming off a triple-double a few games ago. Then we're going to look at Chris Paul. Now, I really like him a lot today. He has played extremely well with Booker being back. In fact, his usage has actually risen some, though his minutes kind of cap out around the 30-minute mark. But he does have some nice upside. As long as he's under $8,000, he's somebody I like to consider, regardless of the roster situation in Phoenix. But without Durant still playing and a couple of the guards out, he has some nice upside here. Then we're going to look at Drew Holiday. Now, I really like Drew Holiday today. His price is down, which gives him nice upside. And Boston looks like they're going to be running a shell lineup today. The only real risk to him today is the blowout. So if you think that game will stay reasonably close, I think he's definitely viable on the slate, especially with Porter still out and other guys on Boston being out. Then we're going to look at Markelle Fultz. Now, I was initially kind of confused as to, I was kind of reluctant to utilize him, but the more and more I look at him, his floor has actually been pretty low, most of the season, but lately he's been playing really good and consistent minutes, and his usage has been really good as well. He has a high ceiling, which he's hit a few times over the last 10 or so games, and he's got some nice upside at this price. Once he gets over $6,000, I don't think he'll come back down as long as he continues to play the minutes. And he's been getting lots of rebounds and assists, for him, which is really helping boost his fantasy output. And so I really do like him today. I think he's playing extremely well. Then we're going to look at Chris Middleton for Milwaukee. Now, he's obviously in a blowout risk situation as well, but he's been improving in 6 of the last 7 games. He's been over 25 fantasy points, which is right around where we need him to get today, at least. And his minutes seem to have started to begin rising as well. With Portis out, he's a little bit more consistent off the bench when it comes to the minutes, and that definitely helps him, but it's still a little bit risky due to the fact that he comes off the bench right now. Hopefully he'll get back into the starting lineup eventually, but the way they're playing, the biggest risk here is the blowout situation and just him not playing a full complement of minutes. Then we're going to look at the Golden State Warriors and look at Kevin Looney. Now, he's the only guy on the Warriors right now that I have any confidence in because it looks like he'll likely start regardless of what happens with the rest of the lineup. His price is just too cheap. He's dropped down in price a lot for some reason. He does have a low floor, which can be annoying, but he does have some big time upside when he plays well. And this is a situation where he might get a lot of minutes as a result of guys potentially shooting out. And so I look for him to have a good upside here. And then last but not least, I'm going to mention Matisse Thybulle, who he played his first game for the Portland Trailblazers yesterday. He played 25 minutes, started, and had 14 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks, and a steal. I don't expect him to do that again, but he is minimum priced. I do think that he's going to be popular on the slate simply because it's relatively small and there's some good plays that are more expensive, and there's also obviously some good value plays today. But he has some. If he does start, then he'll be somebody that's viable here. Though I do want to caution you. When he was on his former team in Philadelphia, he only had one game where he actually 5x'd as a starter. Even at this price point, he was under 10 fantasy points in most of those games, and he's only had 6 games all season long where he got over 15 fantasy points. So it is a little bit risky, but he did play well in his first game for Portland, and I look for them to potentially go back to the well again. And we'll have to wait and see, obviously, what Portland is going to do with him and their roster, as they've got a lot of questionable tags as well. So lots of question marks today, not a ton of great answers, and I don't love how players are priced that much today, but I think Drew Holiday and Chris Paul are probably the best plays at this point, but I do think a lot of things will open up later throughout the day. So thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.